Hey everybody, welcome to Music Corner. I have an idea, I'll be right back. It looks so bad. Hey everybody, welcome to the Music Corner YouTube channel. This is a little bit of a project that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I know that the world of written music journalism isn't really for everybody, and that's been my little hidey hole for like 3 years now of writing reviews and features and articles, but I wanted to kind of think outside the box and work on a project that I was obviously not prepared for, which is make a YouTube video. So the world of YouTube is incredibly foreign to me, starting with this, where we are and what we're doing right now. It's like 1 in the morning and I'm deciding to do this on a whim. I'm working with a pretty lo-fi setup. I know the audio is not great. I'm sure there's bad shadows. I can tell just from the lighting that I put up. But even if this goes moderately well, I'm hoping that I can get somebody who actually knows what they're doing to help out. But like the reviews, it's mostly about the content, and the content that we're dealing with today is my 20 favorite records of the year so far. And I specifically picked this list because I think these records are great, not because I think they're accessible or easy to listen to. There's a reason it's not called 20 records you should hear from 2020 so far. Some of these are challenging listens, some of these are difficult and patience testing listens, but I think all of them are rewarding. I've reviewed over 100 records and EPs so far this year, so it was difficult to get it down to just 20. It's a really great bunch, and I put them in alphabetical order, and we're just going to run through all 20 of them. So we're going to get started here at the letter A, of course, talking about Against All Logic with the record 2017 to 2019. This is a side project of experimental music producer Nicholas Jar, who released his own pretty good record this year under his own name. If you like dark ambient music, I totally recommend it. But Against All Logic over here is a lo-fi house pseudonym. These are house tracks that are heavily influenced by the worlds of soul music and sometimes funk music, but also industrial and dance floor music. There are bangers, club ragers on this thing like Deefers, and there are also tracks like the opener Fantasy that are slick and catchy and easy to listen to. That song even features a deep cut Beyonce sample. So if you like your music on the dance floor, but you're not afraid for it to be a little bit experimental, be a little bit grating, be a little bit outside the box, you've got to check out Against All Logic. It's definitely one of the better house records you're going to hear this year. Which actually kind of leads us decently into the next record we're going to talk about. Caribou with the album Suddenly. Caribou is one of the projects of Dan Snaith, whose other project Daphne landed on my EPs of the year list last year, the great Sizzling. I recommend that. But this over here is Caribou, which rather than straight up dance tracks is a much more electronica focused project. This thing is full of glitzy, glittery, beautiful beats paired with some really cool driving hip-hop percussion. The influences are coming from all over the place, but Dan is melding them with his sugary sweet vocals into songs that are just blissful and great on the ears. Everything on here is totally beautiful. If electronica is something that normally scares you, songs on this record like Home and New Jade and You and I is a great way to dip your toes into music that you're almost guaranteed to like because it's so instant, it's so catchy. And just give this whole record a listen if you're interested in anything that I've said about it, because it's really good. Next up, we've got songstress pop music extraordinaire Charli XCX. She just dropped this huge, expansive, self-titled pop record last year and is already back with a new album, How I'm Feeling Now. This thing is a quarantine album, and not just in the way that it was made during the quarantine. The songs have a tinny electronic feel to them, and the lyrics all over this thing, the themes, the subject matter is all about the emotions and sensations of being locked up. The closing track, Anthems, talks in detail about feeling the heat of other bodies when you're, in the dance floor, in the club. And that's the place that Charli likes to live in. So if you've loved her music so far, you're definitely going to love this thing. It's so interesting and so unique to see her taken out of the club vibe. Even though people have been vibing to Charli XCX songs alone in their bedroom, me included, for years, now she's making music that is specifically for that, and it's great. It's really interesting. It's one of the only true records that I think can be considered a quarantine record from top to bottom, everything about it. So the next record we're going to talk about comes from Destroyer, the Dan Bayar project. It is the record Have We Met? If you're familiar with Destroyer, you'll know that some of the sweetest, sophisticated-ist indie pop has come from Dan Bayar and this project. If you've ever heard records like Kaput and Poison Season, I highly, highly recommend them if you like your indie pop smart and if you like your pianos plentiful. But this record is a little bit of a change of pace, not from a songwriting standpoint, but from a sound, because this thing is just dark. And track after track after track channels this idea of a, slick cabaret singer with a glass of bourbon delivering these, machismo bravado type songs to a, dark, mostly empty room of cigarette smokers at 2 a.m. I don't have a watch on. Anyway, this thing's great, and its ability to carry and maintain that aesthetic throughout is just a wonderful treat that lasts pretty much from start to end. There's nothing on this record that compares with how great tracks like Chinatown or Times Square are, but this thing has its consistency locked down. There are very few duds, if any, in this track list. So the fifth record we're going to talk about to mark the 25% point of the video is Fiona Apple's Fetch the Bolt Cutters. Now, this is probably the most universally critically acclaimed album of the year so far, not just because Pitchfork gave this thing a 10, but because just about every critic that has lended their ears to this record has totally fell in love with it, me included. This thing's fascinating. It's one of the best records I've heard all year. Fiona Apple, as a songwriter, has never sounded this dynamic, this versatile, this incredible, to me, to my ears at least. And this thing is just all highlights. Shamika, Relay, Cosmonauts for Her, the title track, Newspaper, Heavy Balloon, and none of these songs are samey. She's taking on different lyrical topics. She's dealing with different types of instrumentals within the sort of realm of indie folk. She is refusing to back herself into a corner, and the result is a record that is not only great, but is great in like 50 different ways in under an hour. And it doesn't surprise me at all the acclaim that this thing has been receiving, because it's incredible. So the next record we're going to be talking about at number 6 comes to us as a collaboration from rapper Freddie Gibbs and producer The Alchemist. Now, last year Freddie Gibbs collaborated with Madlib on the record Bandana, one of my favorite hip-hop records of the year, one of my favorite records of the year, period. So I was excited to see where Freddie was going to go next, and this record with The Alchemist, which he's been promising for a long time, now that it's finally here, it's awesome. It's different, though. You're not going to catch some of the same confrontational, hard-hitting tracks that you heard on Bandana on this record. There's nothing like Palmolive, per se, that is on Alfredo. But what Alfredo does have is these summery, instantly catchy, warm beats. And over these beats, Freddie kind of flexes his versatility. He shows himself off as an MC who can hop on any beat, as he consistently delivers slick, catchy, great bars, wonderful hooks. He is really the star of the show again on this thing, which is impressive given how different of a record it is from Bandana, and everybody involved just did a really good job at putting this album together. Speaking of hip-hop, the next record on our list is the Electronica album, A Written Testimony. Now, if you're not familiar with Electronica, he's been around for a long time, but his discography consists of somewhere between 10 to 15 songs. This was a long awaited debut album, but it really isn't a conventional debut album from Electronica, and that upset a lot of people because this is mostly a collaborative record between Electronica and label mate Jay-Z. But I think if you put aside the fact that people have been waiting a long time for just a Electronica record and listen to this album for what it is, It's excellent. The beats are fresh and fantastic throughout, and Jay-Z and Electronica are trading off bars about wealth and success and family, and most notably faith, as they share a belief in the nation of Islam. So you're going to catch bars on this thing about Louis Farrakhan and about the Quran all over, particularly on the really great closing track, All Praises Due to Allah, where Jay-Z raps about screenshotting text messages from friends who will never text him again because Allah has taken them home. So if you're looking for a hip-hop record to jam to this summer, this thing is not full of bops. It is intimate and emotional, but it will almost certainly make you feel something, and I think there's a lot of credit to be given to the songwriting of these two veteran MCs on the record. Next up is lo-fi legend Jeff Rosenstock with his new surprise album, NODREAM. This dude fronted Bomb the Music Industry and the Arrogant Sons of Bitches in the 2000s, but since then, he has found a lane in solo music, and really successfully. Since his single Nausea came out, critics have eaten up pretty much everything he's released. And even though I didn't love his last record, NODREAM is right back on track with the best stuff he's ever done. This thing is full of short, lo-fi, fiery, explosive, balls-to-the-wall punk music. If you like your rock music political and you like your politics totally revolutionary, give this thing a shot, because it is Jeff Rosenstock at his most nihilistic so far. And if the world at large over the last 6 months or so has made you feel similar, you're probably going to relate to these sentiments in a way that you maybe haven't before with Jeff's music. Damn it. Next up, we've got a record that just came out last week. At the time of recording this, my review for the album isn't even out. It'll probably be up by the time this video goes up, though. And that is the new Jessie Ware record, What's Your Pleasure? Jessie Ware was at one time the mature pop star who was going to save the world from all of these divas, but that sort of became a crutch for her as critics kind of came at her for almost being a little bit too devoid of personality in her maturity. And even though I've always been a fan of her music, even I have to admit that this new record is her best album yet. And it's because everybody involved has such a remarkable sense of detail to the beats and to the mixing and the songwriting, and the lead vocals on this thing are all totally immaculate. This thing is hugely inspired by the disco music of the 70s and the synth pop of the 80s. If you loved records like Dua Lipa's Future Nostalgia and Lady Gaga's Chromatica, this thing may be a little bit more patient and take a little bit more listens to reveal what makes it so great to you, but I promise you it's worth your time. I don't think you're going to find a more accessible but incredible pop record this year. The thing is fantastic. Jessie Ware, give it a listen. And the last record that I want to talk about in the first half of the video is the short but incredibly sweet Laura Marling record, Song for Our Daughters. This thing is a singer-songwriter album. It's not going to do anything you have never heard before. It is folk-inspired like so much of the genre, and there's not really a moment on here that is going to totally blow your mind with something that Laura is doing in particular. But when you finish this record, I think you're going to look back on it and say that, wow, there's not a bad song on this thing, because there really isn't. What she achieves here is really special, with the level of consistency of execution and the resulting record that is just good from start to finish. It's good. It's all just good. So we've got an outfit change for the second half of the video, because every single light in this room is on. And it is hot, but we're gonna power through it. Let's go. Record number 11, Mark Kozelek, All the Best, Isaac Hayes. Mark Kozelek has fronted two legendary indie bands, Red House Painters and Sunkill Moon, and is now at a point in his career where his music is at its most indulgent. This is definitely the most patient and difficult record of all 20 that I am recommending. This thing is an 80-minute spoken word tour alongside Mark Kozelek. He goes through a bunch of Canadian cities, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Asheville, Nashville, and tells stories along the way. And these are old stories from old tours with a who's who of indie names that pop up in here, and new stories that are happening to him in a sort of stream of conscience, modern type songwriting. If you've heard anything that he's done basically since Common as Light and Love, you understand the approach that this record is going to take, the very dry, very stripped back, narrative heavy spoken word that he is delivering here. But this is it done at close to its best. I really, really love this record, and I've loved almost all the material he's dropped over the last few years, and I think that this is one of the best, if not the best, since Common as Light and Love. So the next record on the list comes to us via Mike Hadrius, aka Perfume Genius, with Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. If you didn't know, Perfume Genius has a little bit of a special place within the Music Corner canon because his last record, No Shape, all the way back in 2017, was the second 10 out of 10 review I ever gave in my reviewing career. So expectations were really, really high for this. Not that I expected Mike to show up and drop another 10 out of 10, but this record really does mostly live up to the hype. The only complaints I have about it is just a few songs that don't live up to how good the rest of the tracks are. And Blake Mills is back once again producing these instrumentals, so you know that the song sounds absolutely incredible. The arrangements are gorgeous, but the variety that Perfume Genius manages to pull off, with tracks like On the Floor being dancey, upbeat, groovy 80s pop songs, with tracks like Whole Life being these really indulgent, thought-provoking, sort of soul-searching caliber songs, and then a track like Jason that is a stark, intimate, and sensual portrayal of sexuality that is just fascinating. The versatility is incredible, the record is incredible, listen to it. Next up, we have YouTube personality turned synth pop sensation, Poppy. Now, Poppy started off making this really glittery kind of synthetic, pardon the pun, synth pop, but since then, she has been grabbing on to just about any genre that she can find and attaching it to this core of songwriting that is really tight and really enjoyable, and she does this all over the new record, I Disagree. Now, there are songs on here that are close to maybe what you could consider synth pop, but they're usually pretty quickly interrupted by some chunky nu metal guitar riffs and screamed vocals. She's diving into even more versatile genres than before on this record. There's seriously a track on here that is like shoegazy, dream poppy, and another song with a trip hop breakdown. You're not going to hear another record this year with the cerebral versatility that this album has on display. I guarantee it. So the next track comes from another fascinating pop music figure, Rina Sawayama, with her debut record, Sawayama. She dropped an EP, Rina, a few years ago that still to this day I get people in my inbox telling me that I should have made this my EP of the year, even though to this day I stick with Young Thug on that one. But now her big breakout debut project is here, and once again it is packed full of production from the one and only Clarence Clarity, so this thing just pops off. And the versatility of the execution, from ballads like Chosen Family to arena pop ragers like and one of my favorite songs I've heard all year, Excess. This thing executes perfectly in a whole different lane and variety of pop music sensibilities, and it does it all incredibly well. If you like Charli XCX, if you like PC music, experimental pop music, you have to hear this thing. It's gonna be one of your favorite records of the year. And to take us to 75% of the way through this video, we are talking Killer Mike and LP of Run the Jewels with Run the Jewels 4. This Atlanta meets New York hip-hop collaboration seemed strange at first, but since then these guys have dropped non-stop heat, non-stop fire. Everything they've touched has turned to gold, and Run the Jewels 4 is just like all of their other fantastic records. If you're familiar with the Run the Jewels formula, you will know that this record will not give you a moment to breathe, whether it is coming at you with fiery, explosive, fast-paced verses, or these really politically charged, like highbrow politically charged songs that will force you to think about the state of the world around you. This is one of the best Run the Jewels records yet. This is coming from somebody who thinks that Run the Jewels 2 is gospel, but this thing is almost that good. I highly recommend it. The features are incredible, LP's production is incredible, and Killer Mike's politics are incredible. This thing is a great, great, great hip-hop record. If you like rap in any capacity, do yourself a favor and listen to it. Okay. We are flying through this, boys and girls. We have just 5 records left to talk about, and we are going to kick it off with a record that I'll say, if you go away from this list of 20 albums and you only listen to one record, you say, I only want to hear one album, let it be the Strokes record, The New Abnormal. Not because this thing is the most accessible, but I think it's because it is at the middle grounds of absolutely incredible music that is comfortable enough and connected enough to contemporary rock music that it's going to be easy enough for you to get into this thing and for you to realize what makes this thing so incredible. The expectations for the Strokes were sky high with this comeback, but they totally lived up to it. They dropped one of the best records I've heard all year. This thing is fascinating and fantastic from start to finish. The singles were all 3 great, which raised expectations even farther, but the results here are that tracks like Ode to the Mets, The Adults Are Talking, and Selfless are among my favorite tracks of the bunch, and that includes 3 great, great, great singles. This thing is fantastic. There's almost no duds on this entire track list, and for a band like the Strokes to come back and do it in this spectacular of a fashion is insane. It's amazing. Julian Casablancas' versatility as a frontman on this record is as good as any vocals on any record I've heard this year, which has not always been his strong suit, particularly in the realm of versatility. It's amazing. Next up, we've got a record that may be a little bit controversial to place on this list, and I know that there's a lot of people that don't like this band or don't like this record for one reason or another, but there's no way I could make this list without including Tame Impala's The Slow Rush. Now, a lot of people dislike the fact that Kevin Parker isn't making the bluesy, psychedelic, 60s-inspired guitar rock that he did on the first 2 Tame Impala records, and a lot of people don't like that since 2015's Currents, the band's last album, they have grown massively in popularity. But in case you were wondering if this record is a sellout, pay attention to the detail in songs like It Might Be Time or One More Hour, Breathe Deeper, Posthumous Forgiveness, because it is incredibly clear that Kevin Parker is passionate about this type of music that he is writing. So even if the psychedelic pop music isn't really your thing, you should be able to notice that the attention to detail on this record is immaculate, the sounds are crisp and beautiful, and the songwriting is just as good as tracks like Elephant and Feels Like We Only Go Backwards and Apocalypse Dreams. This is coming from somebody who called Lonerism one of the 10 best records of the last decade, and I love this album. I don't really want Tame Impala to write a Lonerism 2 if that's not what Kevin Parker wants to do, because this is more than enough. I think it's great. So the next record we're dealing in is another one of what may be the least popular albums, maybe alongside Mark Kozelek. We're talking Torres with Silver Tongue. Now, Torres was a big deal in the indie music world a few years ago with Sprinter, but since then, she has kind of fallen out of favor with the singer-songwriter crowd, and the reason for that is that the singer-songwriter crowd hates experimentation. They don't like it. They want you to write the same folk Bob Dylan-esque tracks forever, and I know that I'll get some shit for that, but Torres on her last 2 albums has stepped way outside the box and paired her singer-songwriter music with these distant, just wailing, blistering guitars and shrill electronics, like literally clipping songs. The mix is so lo-fi on some of these tracks, but the songwriting is so beautiful that everything she does shines through in a really immaculate and really enjoyable way. I just like this thing. I think it's fantastic, and I know I'll get shit for saying this too, but moments on this record legitimately remind me of Kid A. Like, that level of experimentation with electronics. Not to say the songwriting is as brilliant as Kid A is, but if you listen to this record with that in mind, I think you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. So the second to last record on the docket is a strange but always very welcome phenomenon where the best-selling record of the year, at least the best-selling record of the year so far, turns out to be one of the best records of the year, and that's The Weeknd with After Hours. I've always loved The Weeknd's music, particularly his fantastic singles, which came one after another over the last decade, but After Hours is the first time since his legendary 2011 mixtape run that I've really loved a full-length project of Abel's. That's because this thing avoids a ton of the pitfalls that records like Starboy and Beauty Behind the Madness fall into. The deep cuts here, with the exception of the relentlessly boring Escape from LA, every other track here hits. Even songs like the intro and outro or interlude style tracks, they're great sound collage pieces and sonic moments that help tie up both thematic and sonic consistencies across the record, and people like Kevin Parker of Tame Impala and Oneohtrix Point Never of all people feature on this record, make contributions to this record. The track list is fantastic. It's got great variety. The title track is one of the best songs I've heard all year. Heartless is fantastic. In Your Eyes is a banger. Faith is this big, expansive banger. Scared to Live is this intimate, beautiful ballad. And Hardest to Love is maybe an even more intimate, more beautiful ballad. This thing is just fantastic. It's great. Don't let the fact that it's a big, glossy, high-budget R&B record turn you off of it, because it's amazing. I love it. And the final record of these 20 that we are going to talk about comes from Wolf Parade. Now, Wolf Parade, if you didn't know, once in 2005 released a record called Apologies to the Queen Mary that is considered by many, including myself, to be one of the greatest indie albums of the 2000s, maybe even one of the greatest indie albums of all time. And it's been a kind of tumultuous road for the band trying to match that potential. They haven't really achieved that level of success or really come anywhere close, despite the fact that I've enjoyed their music pretty consistently over the years. This record, however, may be the closest that they come to matching Apologies to the Queen Mary, and that's because of the instrumentals. The lyrics, the songwriting, the vocals have always been good and the most unique and refreshing part of Wolf Parade, but now these really immaculate, natural sounding, but driving and beautiful and sometimes aggressive and sometimes jittery and manic instrumentals are matching exactly what the songwriting and the vocal performance deserves, and the result is fireworks all over this thing. I mean, seriously, the track Out of Control blows my mind every single time that I hear it, and I can't believe that more reviewers and indie blogs and places are not talking about it, because I think it's incredible. But yeah, if indie music is your bag, if indie folk is your bag, if these kind of complex compositions, these winding instrumentals is something that appeals to you, you might want to give this record a shot, because it might be exactly what you're looking for. And that's all I've got to say. Hopefully, somewhere in that list of 20 records you found something that piqued your interest that you wanted to listen to, or if you've heard all 20 of these records, maybe give a listen to some EPs. Black or Dirty Projectors dropped 2 amazing EPs. Little Sims, Flatbush Zombies, Yesu. But besides that, thanks for watching. I know that this is not up to the quality caliber of a lot of YouTube videos. I have no experience with YouTube, and if this goes well, hopefully we will learn from our mistakes, we'll make a better product, and I have some video topics in mind if I wanted to keep this up that I could do. I will put the links to my reviews of all these records in the description in case you wanted to read them and check them out, or if you wanted to read some other reviews. They're obviously going to continue coming throughout the rest of the year. There will be plenty more good music left to hear about. And other than that, thanks for watching. Hopefully I will catch you back here again with some more quality musical content